Hey everybody, and welcome back to my channel. Hope everyone's having a happy Monday. It's kind of cloudy out here, so I decided to film my video hopefully before it starts raining. So I'm going to go ahead and continue my next episode of my saga. But instead of talking about my dating life, I'm actually going to insert an episode and talk a little bit about friendship within the Jehovah's Witness organization and my personal experience with it as a single sister in the Jehovah's Witness organization. So if you're interested in hearing more about my story, please stay tuned. So I touched on some of the experiences that I had as a child with friendship a couple episodes ago. I talked about how I kind of struggled with making friends and fitting in, how I kind of became socially awkward because, again, for a few years I lived in a single parent household. And then for a few years I lived with a father who was inactive. So I kind of struggled with making friends throughout my childhood and my teenage years. It wasn't until I started going to college and I was an adult that I actually started making friends. So one of my first actual friends, besides my cousin who I played with when I was little, was the sister that I told you about in the college experience that I met through the sister that was the secretary of the university I attended. And so we were really close while I was down in college and kind of finding myself and everything. And the cool thing about her is that even though she was an active Jehovah's Witness, she kind of still enjoyed some of the things that maybe some witnesses kind of frown upon, but not enough to necessarily get her in trouble. But she did things like she listened to hip hop music. She watched Dave Chappelle, which was really big back in the early 2000s. And she also, she'd hang out with some of our local college friends and things like that. So she wasn't necessarily your standard, very strict Jehovah's Witness. She was really fun and everything. And so she taught me a lot. She showed me a lot. She even kind of helped with my fashion sense because I was really awkward at the time. So we had a lot of fun while I was down there in college. And I really enjoyed actually hanging with her because I actually got to see another side of what it's like to be a Jehovah's Witness and not necessarily be worried all the time about what people thought about me. And so we were really close and really cool. But then at the end of my freshman year, as I mentioned in my last episode, I decided to transfer back home so I could be back home with my parents, since I was kind of getting a lot of flack from the elders about going to school away from home and living in a dorm. So I moved away from her, but we still kind of kept in touch and we were pretty close. We still talked to each other once in a while, caught up on our lives. And even when she graduated from college a couple years later, she actually vacationed with us, chilled with us and everything. And then when she got married a few years after that, she actually picked me as her bridesmaid. So that was really neat because that was my first wedding that I was actually in. So we were pretty cool and pretty tight. And so obviously we're not really in contact right now, since I'm out of the Jehovah's Witness religion. But that's not necessarily her doing. I kind of distanced myself because I kind of knew what was coming once I decided to be a Jehovah's Witness anymore. But hopefully, she was a really good person. So hopefully one day, she comes to a realization, she's able to research the religion that she was raised in. And, I would definitely be open to catching up with her one day, because she was a really good friend. And so, my second really close friend, we met and started bonding not too long after I transferred back home to my community college, after my freshman year. She was from the West Coast, and she was not raised as a Jehovah's Witness. Her mom became one while they were still on the West Coast. And so she, of course, didn't convert right away, but when she was around 17 or 18, she decided to get baptized. She decided this was the truth for her, and she got baptized. So we really started bonding after she got done with high school a little bit after I graduated. So after she graduated, we became really close. We started pioneering, auxiliary pioneering together. She was in school as well, in community college. So we really bonded. And she was kind of the opposite of me. I was really reserved, very introverted, very concerned about what people thought of me. And she was the opposite. She was very outgoing, outspoken. She basically spoke her mind. So if she saw something she did not like, she was going to say something. And so I really liked that about her. So I felt like we complemented each other in that way. So we really started hanging out. We went out in service together. We hung out together. We were at each other's house all the time. So we had a lot of fun together. And so it just really felt good to have someone that was basically close to home that I could call my friend, because I had never experienced this. Mind you, I was about 20, 21 years old when we started becoming friends. So it was a nice feeling. And then when you're a Jehovah's Witness, the assumption is when you have another friend that's a Jehovah's Witness, you basically can trust them. Even though they're not perfect, they want your best intentions. That's actually something they talk about in their literature. So it was just really, it felt good to have somebody around like that. And thinking back, I realized that I kind of had a stunted experience when it came to friendship, because growing up in the religion, if you're born into it, when you're going to school and things like that, you may have classmates that you get along with, that you think that they would make really good friends with you and that you hang out with in school, but outside of school you're not allowed to hang out with them. So I didn't have those experiences of hanging out with friends, going to the movies, going to parties, things like that with friends, until I was in my 20s. So it's almost like I experienced a lot of things as an adult that I really should have experienced in my teens. And I think that created in me some type of like almost dependent relationship upon the people who I made my friends, because I had never had that before. So I kind of became dependent on that. And that really causes you to kind of sometimes overlook some things, maybe some major character flaws or some things that happen, that in your friendship that you really needed to reconsider maybe having that person as a friend. So I started to notice these things, some of these things in my latter friendship, that really taught me lessons about being a single Jehovah's Witness sister and having friends within that. And so that kind of happened with basically in two different instances. So the first instance, again, we were both young, women in the organization. We were both single. I was the type that, even though my self-esteem was kind of messed up, I wanted things to happen naturally. If I got married within the organization, then great. If I had children within the organization, great. If not, then, things happen for a reason. My friend, on the other hand, she was determined to get married. She had her wedding planned, the wedding dress she wanted, where she wanted to get married, even the kingdom song that she wanted to play while she was walking down the aisle when she got married. So she was really gung-ho about the wedding. I don't know if she necessarily planned a marriage through, but she was really into the wedding. And so her determination, of course, was obviously to find a Jehovah's Witness husband. And I was like, okay, let it happen naturally. But there were some people in my congregation who were trying to marry me off at the time. And so any single brother that they were kind of eyeing for me, they were always trying to pair me up. And I think at the time, again, since my self-esteem was kind of low, I kind of felt good about them trying to pair me up with people, not realizing that was not letting things happen naturally. But so anytime that happened, or if it seemed like anytime a brother kind of looked my way, it seemed like this particular friend would often go behind my back and go talk to that brother. And it seemed like, whether I liked the brother or not, that was happening a lot. It happened a couple of times. And then I didn't find out about the time where I actually really was interested in someone. And she knew it. And I told her everything. I told her all my feelings about this particular person, which I'll probably discuss in the next video. But came to find out years later that she was trying to get at him instead. And I would notice, like, those particular individuals, those brothers, they would be nice to me or in my face the one moment, and then she would talk to them, and all of a sudden they would kind of look at me funny. So I didn't really equate that she was basically going behind my back and maybe saying some things about me and trying to get at them herself, until kind of years later. And so when I found that out, it really kind of hurt me, and hurt my feelings, because I thought we were really tight. But the lesson I learned, now that I'm out, is that it really shows you kind of the desperation sometimes that single sisters have within the organization. And it's not really their fault. A lot of times, sisters who are not married are kind of looked down upon. They're looked at as being in the fringes of society, even especially after they're a certain age. They're kind of looked at like, why aren't you married yet? You don't really have much of an opportunity to have a position within the organization anyway. And the only remote chance you have of being somebody in the organization is if you get married to maybe like an elder or ministerial servant or circuit overseer or something. And then you kind of are looked at as something. So it's kind of a struggle. And then the area that I was living in at the time, because I was in Atlanta, the number of sisters greatly outnumbered the number of baptized brothers. So basically, eligible sisters, there's probably I'm probably exaggerating, but maybe not so much. There was probably a 10-to-1 ratio of sisters to brothers. So there was always this competitive spirit among single sisters around the brothers who were still available. And that really did impact a lot of friendships and things like that. So it's kind of sad, because you really sometimes have to question if you can have a true friendship within the organization, especially if you're a single sister that does desire to get married one day. And so that was really tough for me at the time, but I still kind of, again, was dependent on the friendship because I had never had a friend before. And so the other thing that kind of gave me a red flag was once she finally did meet a brother that was, interested in her and wanted to court her, things kind of changed. Our relationship kind of changed. I went from kind of being the best friend to being the built-in chaperone, the third wheel, so to speak. One thing, and I'll talk about this a little bit in my next episode, when you're a Jehovah's Witness and you're dating someone, they strongly encourage you to have a chaperone with you at all times. For some reason, they don't trust young single people trying to get to know each other alone. They don't trust them to be alone with each other. And so they encourage somebody else to be with them. And so I was kind of their chaperone all the time. But when there were times where her soon-to-be husband wasn't able to hang out or wasn't able to go with her, she kind of didn't want to do anything anymore. And so it was kind of, sad, because, you go through being lonely for several years of not really having a friend, and then you get a friend. But then there's kind of that distance because, they want to be with that person that they're with. They don't necessarily want to be around you anymore. So that was kind of disheartening and everything. So eventually she did get married, and I think after the marriage, she realized how big marriage was and how much of a burden it was. And I sometimes question her compatibility with this particular brother. I don't know if they kind of were necessarily compatible. So that was a struggle for her. So again, she kind of leaned more on me at the time, and we started kind of hanging out again. And, it felt good to have my friend back. But not too long after that, I met my soon-to-be husband, and I started spending a lot of time with him. And of course, I couldn't really tell my BFF about my husband because he was not a Jehovah's Witness. Again, I'll talk about that more on another episode. So that friendship kind of ended again with me distancing myself from her. And then when I finally left my parents' house abruptly, I kind of basically I kind of did a reverse shun in effect, because I knew once I left the religion, I would lose those family and that friendship anyway. So I kind of just, I guess to avoid too much heartache, I kind of just removed myself from the situation, instead of, prolonging things and making things more painful than they are. But sometimes I do think about that friend, even though, we kind of had our ups and downs in our friendship. I do think about her as well. And I hope, especially because she wasn't born as a Jehovah's Witness, she came into it later in life, that she does also research the religion that she's come to learn, and hopefully come to a decision and decide if this really is the religion for her. So since I've kind of left the Jehovah's Witness religion, I've really struggled with making friends, period. Because I'm so socially awkward, I really struggle with those things. I haven't been able to kind of put myself out there and make new friends, because that's a very scary prospect for me. So that's been kind of hard. And so that's one thing I'd advise you. If you are a current Jehovah's Witness or an ex-Jehovah's Witness, and you're really considering your research religion and you found some things that you don't necessarily like, my advice to you is to form a circle of friends and associates outside of the religion. Because once you make a decision to leave, you're going to automatically lose those friends that you've made. And so I basically spent 20 years trying to make friends that I ended up losing anyway, because I left the religion. So it's very important for you to basically make connections outside of the religion, get close with family outside of the religion, try to be close with them, because that's an issue I had. I had a lot of family outside the religion. On my dad's side, we're pretty close, but they live in another country. But I have some family that are in the United States. And because I kind of kept my distance for so many years because they weren't Jehovah's Witnesses, I'm still kind of hesitant at kind of reaching out to them now. And so that's one thing I think that if you're looking into your religion right now, please form an outside circle. But one thing I do appreciate are the circles of ex-Jehovah's Witnesses that I've met on social media. So on my Twitter, my Instagram, Reddit, and of course YouTube, I've connected with a lot of people who have had similar experiences to mine, or even different, but it's just been really nice. It's been a very loving community. No matter what our belief system is, it's been really supportive. And so I greatly do appreciate that. So that's another thing I'd encourage you to do, is to kind of stay on social media. It might be a little bit scary and daunting to go out there in person and make new friends. So start with putting yourself out there on social media, interacting with other ex-Jehovah's Witnesses and things like that. And so that kind of will really help in kind of helping you to form a circle of people that can be your support system. So that pretty much wraps up this episode of my experience with friendship within the Jehovah's Witness religion. So the next episode will be my dating experience within the Jehovah's Witness religion. So if you're interested in the next episode of my saga, please stay tuned to the next video. Also, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Much love.